So spicy food, sex, caffeine, alcohol, all these things should be abstained from for a certain period of time, usually a minimum of 2 weeks before. Especially with the New Age movement, I think in many ways that's corrupted spirituality, at least like what it's been for human beings for thousands of years. This was like spiritual work, and spiritual discipline were required to take you to higher levels of consciousness. It wasn't just a consumer fad. So you're preparing your body, a vessel, to be sensitive. So anything that's too stimulating affects you in certain ways before you do ayahuasca. So Carl Jung called it unconscious. But at the end of his life, he goes, I was saying unconscious, but what I really meant was soul.
Today I am interviewing a very special guest. His name is Luke Jensen. He is one of the founders of Tiwaz Awakening. And unfortunately, like many YouTubers or content creators in the beginning, we had some technical difficulties where the first part of the episode did not record. So I'm going to do my best to summarize the beginning, and then we're going to get right into the interview or pick up the interview where Luke's talking about Tiwaz Awakening. So Luke is a Marine Corps veteran who served under the Marine Corps and the National Guard, deployed to Afghanistan from his hometown in Omaha, Nebraska. And after his experience in the military, it led him to a bit of a spiritual journey where he was dealing with some undiagnosed PTSD. He eventually ended up going to an ayahuasca retreat, I guess you could say, a spiritual retreat down in South America. And from that moment forward, his life was essentially forever changed. He explained during that time, during the retreat, that he experienced somewhat of a metaphysical state where he saw everything as one. Everything in the universe or in nature on Earth was interconnected. We were all part of something bigger. And this cohesiveness of the world around him led him further down his spiritual path to eventually starting and co-founding Tiwaz Awakening. And Tiwaz Awakening is a retreat hosted in South America by Luke and his partner, where they take participants through a variety of activities, not just the ceremony, the ayahuasca ceremony, but hiking and interacting with the town, which is very remote areas of Peru, to Jiu Jitsu and all sorts of activities to really bring people, ground people and help them with their own individual spiritual journey. And then we talked a little bit about neurofeedback, which we're going to have Luke again here in a couple of weeks to talk specifically about neurofeedback and brain mapping and how that can help heal some of our emotional and spiritual traumas. So with that, let's jump right into this episode. I did not do the first half of this episode justice, but I did my best to try to bring you up to speed as to what got us to where we are now.
Yeah, so Tiwaz Awakening, we harken back to the original style of shamanism. And shamanism is a deep word. It's a philosophical word, but it's not something that should be taken lightly. And I think so many ways, there's many big retreats out there that are overly comforting and overly new age, right? And shamanism is supposed to challenge you. In just the same way that boot camp challenges somebody. It's kind of its own challenge. And that challenge is to make you better, to help you evolve as a person. So that's been my view of retreats for the longest time, to harken back to that original meaning and depth to shamanism. Shamanism has depth to it. So in my opinion, it's an experience people should prepare for, and from experience as well, that we've seen that people prepare for it mentally, psychologically, spiritually. They usually get a lot out of it, and people run into trouble if they just kind of do it at the drop of the hat. Like, I'm traveling through, I'll try this out, or like just had a big party weekend, like, oh, I might as well do ayahuasca. But I've also known people that prepare for it and, do a strict diet and meditate on it and for months out sometimes, or even one guy I met was a year out. He was getting ready for a ceremony. And those kind of people get a lot out of it. So we harken back to that. In our retreats, we do 3 ceremonies of ayahuasca, 1 of wachuma, and we do adventure hiking. We take people up to these beautiful places. So oftentimes in retreats, you stay at the retreat center, you don't get to go out, but we make sure people experience the local communities, the mountains, and the nature. And Peru has so much beauty in it. So That's part of our process as well, which I really enjoy and really proud of. And we have jujitsu, we have neurofeedback, we have brain mapping. So we include all the things that have helped us heal, helped me heal, and we're very proud of that. So there's so much in it that we enjoy, and but it's a process. So I remember when did my first ayahuasca retreat, I knew that was an experience that I remember for the rest of my life. And today, I always remember that. I know when people come down, this will probably be one of the top three, top five experiences they'll have, that they'll remember, and how important it is. Obviously, there's a certain amount of trust that goes into that. So we create a place of trust as well. I think whenever you do shamanism, you have to be very careful the shaman you work with, because there's good shamans and there's dark shamans, and you have to be very careful. You're working with a good person with a good soul, you know. But yeah, that's kind of the summary of Tiwaz Awakening. Tiwaz is the rune, the warrior rune, and we want to bring back that warrior spirit as well. So that's why we have the jujitsu in it. We have some martial arts, and we don't overly challenge people. We whatever level they're at. Some people get intimidated by that, but we just teach a couple moves and show them. Or if they're more skilled, we'll spar and stuff like that. But jujitsu and martial arts has been as healing for me as any other plant medicine. I've really, really been powerful. And Chintzia, she's a co-creator of Tiwaz Awakening, and she's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and she loves it as well, and she's been teaching now, and it's been healing for both of us, and both of us have our own trauma, so it's been really amazing on that. And we really enjoy what we've created.
Yeah, I love that. I collabed with John Davis when he was writing his blog article, along with Rolling with Master Guns, on the benefits of jujitsu. And I don't think people realize that it's just like any sport. People get a runner's high, and they love to do all these other things that takes their mind off of, life. But jujitsu is awesome. And, I'm just a measly little white belt. Like, but I come from a Krav Maga background, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just, your stereotypical white belt, but I freaking love it. Just there's something so, I don't know, primitive about that style of martial arts, but it really taps in for me. It really taps into something. I don't know. I don't really know. Maybe you can describe it better than I can, but there's just something about it that is a huge stress relief.
Yeah, I think there's multiple sides to it. So when I got into the neuroscience and the brain mapping, it's very intellectual, and I like that side about me. And I've always read books and stuff, but jujitsu brings you back in your body. There's
Yeah.
no avoiding it. And I think it's so healing because so much of modern world is we're out of our body, and so much of trauma is too. Like we don't feel anymore. And that's the way we avoid trauma unconsciously. But now that jujitsu brings you back. And there's something about human touch. And if you're trying to touch someone or choke somebody, some of that human touch builds endorphins and things like that. And that daily challenge. So I've been involved in other martial arts, but jiu-jitsu you can spar every single day. So it's not a
Yeah.
striking martial art. So you can always see yourself compared to everyone else. You can't really lie to yourself with jiu-jitsu. You can't really think like, you get humbled really quick, and that's the beauty
Yeah.
of it. And also, I would say with jiu-jitsu is that it forces you to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, right? Like if you're in
Yeah.
a tough position, you have to learn how to like be comfortable in that position. Someone might be on top of you, you can't breathe, and you have to learn how to deal with that. And how much you just obviously just learn how to do that can prepare you for so many life situations, including plant medicines, which can also be uncomfortable at times. So for me, jujitsu is medicine, and I've been healed so much by it. That's why we include it, and that's why I love it to this day. I wish I had more time and busy lately, and I haven't been sparring as much as I want to, and traveling a little bit. But I'm so glad it's part of my life. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, I think that definitely says something because I've seen guys, even myself, I come from a Krav Maga background, which is all about joint manipulation, and I went through it when I was. They do Krav Maga certifications for DoD if you're like VBSS or Quick Reaction Force. So I was Quick Reaction Force and VBSS, which is like the Navy's Rivron type. It's a search and seizure aspect of getting on a small boat and searching and seizing and boarding a smaller vessel. You're in the Marine Corps, so so
Yeah.
they have a VBSS team as well. It's visit, board, search, and seizure. So Anyway, so we went through Krav Maga, and I was like, jiu-jitsu's I'm gonna be fine, right? I got this. I got humbled. I got my ass kicked by like a 13-year-old girl who just spider monkeyed me. And like sometimes they spar and they'll have like a
Yeah,
rule like 1 point to whoever gets the other person's back, or 1 point to whoever they touch your knees or something. And it was getting your back. So I'm face to face with this girl, and I was like, I'm gonna destroy her. She's a 13-year-old girl, and I'm like, at the time I was 29. I was like, oh, this is easy. I don't know if she was a magician, but before I knew it, she was already on top of me and like behind me, and I was like, what the hell? So humbling for sure. And I remember her mom was like, she's quick, and I was like, no shit. Like, should have warned me before I got on the mat. But she was probably one of my favorite kids because
yeah,
she was very, very talented,
yeah.
very sure of herself, and whenever she executed any particular movement, she just executed it with finesse. And I learned a lot from her, even though she was much younger than me. But I think that's one of the beauties behind jiu-jitsu is regardless of belt color and age and things like that, there's a lot that you can learn from somebody else. I mean, I guess that can be applied to all aspects of life, but especially when they're kicking your ass on a mat.
For
So,
sure.
yeah. So, you mentioned Tiwaz Awakening. So, what does the typical retreat look like? Like, is there an itinerary that you have for participants?
Yeah, and just kind of going back to what you said, I
Sure.
started jujitsu, and I had previous experience as a black belt in Taekwondo when I was young. I'd been commercial arts. So I thought I was
Mm-hmm.
like really ready for any kind of
Oh,
fight.
McMap.
Guys
Yeah.
half my size would submit me not just
Yeah.
once, but over and over and over again. I'm like, okay, I got to learn
Yeah.
how to do this. This is nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge part of my process too, being humbled. And
Yeah.
but he was awakening. Yes, we have an itinerary. So it's a 9-day retreat. People usually fly down on a we have people fly down. Our retreat starts on a Sunday. So sometimes people fly down the day before, and then they start that day. So it starts on a Sunday, and we go to next Tuesday. But so we fly down Sunday, Monday, Tuesday we have ayahuasca ceremonies. Wednesday off. Thursday ayahuasca ceremony, and then we go to this mountain called Asangate. It's this beautiful mountain in the Andes. It's really sacred, and we meet these like high communities up there that live up there at these heights. There's communities that are living as high as any mountain in Colorado, like 14,000 foot.
Oh, wow.
So just seeing how they live is amazing and beautiful. And then we will watch sumo hike on that Sunday, so that a week from that first day. And we also go into the mountain again called Pumawanka, and there's these people living in stone houses, and it's really interesting to meet these people and appreciates what we have, right? Because we're often very spoiled in Western culture and we forget how other people live in the world. So to see that can be very humbling as well in a different way than jujitsu. And then we have our brain map and we're done. And we have, in different days in the retreat, we have jujitsu, 2 jujitsu days, 2 acupuncture days, 2 brain training days, and yoga. And sometimes we do archery as well. So we throw all that in 9 days. But basically, that's the itinerary. So we fit a lot in, and it's challenging, but when you're done, you know you've accomplished something.
What's some of the feedback that some of your past graduates have? I don't know if graduates is the right term. Alumni. Yeah.
Yeah,
Some
I
of the
suppose
past
alumni, maybe a
participants.
graduate. I don't know because you go through a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
um, we don't formally call it anything, I guess,
Yeah.
but no, I'm really proud of the feedback we received. People have had some really profound experiences, and it's profound healing. And we've received lots of skepticism about jujitsu being a retreat because some people just aren't into
Interesting.
it, but they'll
Yeah.
do the retreat anyway. If anything, that's kind of what scares some people.
Hmm.
But they're like, or like, why is it in there? But once they do it, they're like, oh, okay, I get it, and that's been
Yeah.
really cool. And for me as well, martial arts has a long history of spiritual tradition. If you look at samurai, for example, obviously are very spiritual, tied to Zen Buddhism, and Zen Buddhism has long had a warrior tradition. And the Bhagavad Gita, the oldest spiritual text, is a warrior spiritual text. So I think if people think that violence or martial arts shouldn't be
I
in a
was
retreat,
I was just reading it.
yeah.
Sorry.
So super, super interesting, super important, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it gives you perspective on who we are, and we're not just these physical bodies.
Yeah.
And the Bhagavad Gita talks about we have duty, we have a soul beyond our body, and death's just an illusion. We have to follow our spiritual duty, whatever that is. So, being a warrior, you have to follow that spiritual path. And I think, especially with the New Age movement, I think in many ways that's corrupted spirituality, at least like what it's
Hmm.
been for human beings for thousands of years. And I think they neglected that because for them, that so many ways the New Age movement, it's like everything feels good and whatever works. But if you look at Hinduism or the Vedic traditions or Zen, this was like spiritual work and spiritual discipline were required to take you to higher levels of consciousness. It wasn't just a consumer fad. So I think when you look at it from that side of things, this is why things like jiu-jitsu are very important. So yeah, the people have resonated with that a lot, and really enjoyed it. And I think also people have really enjoyed the hikes we have and experiencing the country. Because like I said, you go to some of these retreats, and there's plenty of healing at different retreats. But I'm proud we're a little different because those big retreats, you never leave the property, you never see anything.
Yeah.
And this medicine we get, ayahuasca and wachuma, it's from that country and from those people. So I think it's important that people experience the country and meet the people and meet the land. That's all important for what we do. And it's also a way we give back as well. So when we travel through those communities, we can buy, little pieces of art or little textiles and things like that. That might not be much for a Westerner, but goes a long way for them. And that's really cool. I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I did when I was down there, and I have some stuff hanging up. Is everywhere I went in South America and anywhere in the world that I've been, I try to buy local art. Um, I have some stuff hanging on my walls from South Africa, and I have a bunch of stuff from Peru and Morocco's, and just random stuff that I bought when I was gallivanting through some of the neighborhoods. A lot of where I was at was off limits because of certain crime, but that's going to be in any big city. Like if I had to pull into port in New York City, I'd probably not have people go anywhere. So it's the same. But yeah, no, I liked what you said about martial arts really putting you like back in your body because you
Yeah,
100% have to be very well aware of where you are in space. Like
right.
you cannot be elsewhere thinking about other things, and you also have to know where your body is. Where is my hand? Do I have the ability of doing this? Being aware of the other person. And when I first went into jiu-jitsu, it was a law enforcement thing. It was a weapons retention class. And so we're in like our gear basically with our blue guns and whatever. And the whole point was kind of like a close quarter thing. I can't say combat, but like a close quarter confrontation with whoever we're dealing with. And it was all about maintaining space, weapon retention, and safely being able to execute an arrest or detention, whatever we were doing. And that was like one of the guys said, "Up, you've been bit by the jujitsu bug," because I was back the next day, and that's when that little girl kicked my ass. So yeah,
That's funny.
but
Yeah, no, I think
yeah.
all that's true and important.
So if someone was so that someone's hearing this podcast or they're seeing this ayahuasca thing, they're hearing it on Joe Rogan's podcast or whatever, where should that process start from the individual's perspective before they make the decision to just sign up? What's some of the things that you recommend, some personal work that they do before they take that leap?
Well, one, you kind of have to feel, um, yeah, the word's calling, I would say, but it's more than just like, oh, I heard this thing, I want to do this. Like something has to be pulling you in a certain way. And you kind of sense that if it keeps coming up in your space, and you have to have a certain feeling about it, like, oh, something inside of you has to speak or be spoken to by this idea. And then I would say do your research. I read a ton of books. I did tons of research, and to be honest, you can read all the books in the world, and they're very interesting, very good. But your experience will be totally different than all those books. It's not going to like
Yeah.
really prepare you for what your individual consciousness will experience. And I think from there, if you want to do it, I think start meditating on it. So anytime in the spiritual space, no matter what you do, intention is very important. So maybe if you have a daily meditation, put a meditation in what you want to accomplish for goals, what you hope to learn. And if you don't know, it can also be I don't know, like maybe the plants will teach me or help me. And I think as you get like a shorter time period out, sometimes it's 2 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and then you want to be serious about diet. And for at least a couple of weeks, you want to abstain from sex or anything like that. Some people go longer, and so basically what you're doing is you're preparing your body, a vessel, to be sensitive. So anything that's too stimulating affects you in a certain way. And so spicy food, sex, caffeine, alcohol, all these things should be abstained from for a certain period of time, usually a minimum of 2 weeks before you do ayahuasca, especially those early experiences, because you really want to connect with the medicine the best you can. And I would say the more intention people put into it, the more they get out of it, from my experience. People that come with less intention don't have the same experience.
Yeah, like a spiritual detox. Sounds like I keep on hearing it come up, and I know eventually one day I might go down there and try it out. But it's hard for me to articulate what I understand what you're saying because I'm personally going through that where I am interested in ayahuasca and these retreats, these spiritual retreats, but the calling's not there yet. Like it's still some some steps I have to take to get to that point. It's just articulating that and putting that into words. It just is hard. So I
Yeah.
think for anybody listening who is interested in this, I think that unless that sign is clear or unless you feel like this is something you're willing to do, then maybe then maybe reach out.
Yeah, and if you just have a question about it, you can always reach out to us as well, or you can talk to someone else about it. There's lots of people in space now, which actually I'm a little apprehensive about because I think a lot of
Mm.
these people are just. I think the true workers are often not in the United States. Like they've lived in the jungle,
Yeah,
they live with the shamans, and that's often their life. I think a lot of people in the United States, like in California, and don't didn't mean to mean anybody, but oftentimes it becomes like a cultural fad, and it kind of attracts
100%.
the wrong
Yeah.
people. Um,
Especially when
and
you
I think
like Demi
sometimes
Lovato,
ayahuasca
but
gets
sorry, go ahead.
what's
Yeah,
that?
yeah. No, I was thinking of like it was Demi Lovato or somebody had like an ayahuasca retreat in their house. Like they had this shaman come in and they put it on TikTok. It's like,
Yeah, no, that's ridiculous, and we never
yeah,
film that during the ceremony because that's sacred.
yeah,
And you
yeah.
should take it as this is sacred medicine, as a sacred retreat, and I remember the first time I walked into a Moloka. It's like their temple, and I felt the energy difference. I could feel that this is a sacred space. And it's interesting. I grew up Catholic, and for whatever reason, I never felt that in a church. I don't know why, but I could feel it when I reached this space because of all the deep healing that was happening there. I could feel the difference. So this is sacred work, and but I think if people are called to it, they should pursue it. For me, it was a latch ditch effort because I was never diagnosed with PTSD at the time, but I was so under so much stress and I had these anxiety symptoms. I didn't know what was going on. It's a last ditch effort, and I wasn't going to try pharmaceuticals even then. I want to do something, and a lot of times people in that situation, like, they should look into it and be prepared. Like some people shouldn't do ayahuasca if they have schizophrenia or certain things like that. That
Hmm.
ayahuasca is not their medicine, and they should look at different modalities. But for some people, it can be very very powerful. And I think often people they'll feel that calling if they should do it.
Yeah, I mean to cut you off. You were talking about the cultural fad of ayahuasca, and I like the concept of an immersive environment and not going to Beverly Hills for a spiritual retreat. So, but you were saying about the cultural fad and that you're a bit apprehensive.
Yeah, so I mean, there's so many sides to that. That's one why we do it in Peru. I think there's something. It makes it a pilgrimage. I would say when you travel
Mhm.
to a different country, especially its home country, it's not just something you just easily do over a weekend. You have to get there. And also it's part of it. Buying that plane ticket's part of it. Buying the retreat is part of it. It's not necessarily a inexpensive process. So the exchange of resources can be important. Now you're putting something on the line on it. I think it's a lot different than just going to the local California shaman and having a weekend where he plays a tape for you, music. Like down there, it's gonna be you're gonna hear shamans singing holy songs called Icaros that are directly going to affect you, that they learn from plants over years and years. So that's not just ayahuasca. I think that's a very important thing to bring up to people is ayahuasca shamanism. That shaman in the room is so important because he's the vehicle for the plants. He's the vehicle for the healing. And once you experience it, you'll understand, or anyone that experiences it understands, like this is much different than, say, just taking LSD. I have nothing against LSD necessarily, but I think the plants have a spirit in them, and it should be respected. And and as far as fads go, when I first did ayahuasca, it was mostly young adventurers, and now we have like doctors and lawyers and professionals like that, or even people. You know, and at my time, like I was one of the oldest people in the group, and now sometimes we see people in their 70s come down. You know, which I think is amazing. It's never too late to start a spiritual path. You know, some people come down and go, "Hey, I have the biggest business in town, and I'm very successful, but I'm not happy for some reason." Like, well, I'm glad you're coming down and trying this out. Um, so there's many good things of it being in the culture more. A lot of people have access to it that wouldn't otherwise. But anything in the culture, especially modern American culture, it can become a fad, it can become trendy, and it loses its sacredness if people don't take it seriously. So I think as a culture, we have to make sure we take these things seriously, even though if the media always doesn't. You know, we have to make sure we take these things seriously. We need to bring back the sacred into our culture. We need to bring back the sacred into the way we live, and we need to bring back the sacred into our environment. Like when you go into nature, those trees are sacred, those rocks are sacred, everything around there is sacred. And to have that mindset that we live in of a world of sacredness and that everything has meaning. It's not nothing has meaning, everything has meaning. When we start adjusting our mindset like that, it can really affect the way you live. And I think ayahuasca should be a doorway to that world. And maybe, well, maybe it's not the only doorway. Maybe it's meditation, maybe it's other things. But for me, ayahuasca was the breaking of the egg or the breaking of the cosmic egg. Just exploded those boundaries. And some people I think need that, especially maybe some veterans like I was. We're so rigid in our thinking, and sometimes it takes that explosion to really open things up, and that allows for novelty. That allows for novel behavior and action. It allows us to have the ability to be our true selves, I would say. So our true selves are not our conscious mind. We always think like our true self is this conscious mind that thinks very linearly. Our true self is something deeper, and we forget about that. So Carl Jung called it unconscious. But at the end of his life, he goes, I was saying unconscious, but what I really meant was soul. I was speaking to a skeptical Western audience. So getting in touch with your soul is so important. So with the modern trendiness of ayahuasca, it's important to remember it's actually soul medicine and spiritual medicine and to take it seriously.
Yeah, I love Carl Jung. I think that he writes, there's a few books that he writes specifically for men that I've read that I think break a lot of the stigmatism of having to be spiritually rigid. But going back to what you were saying and maintaining the sacred nature of things that we take for granted, I find that it's a lack of respect sometimes that the last few generations have for the natural world. And I have a really good friend, Tom. He Tom is in his 60s, I believe. Retired Marine Corps, was a civil servant or worked as a federal employee. And then during COVID, he didn't want to take the vaccine, so he quit. But Tom is probably, I would call him a spiritual mentor of mine. And when you look at him, you see Marine.
Mm.
But he has reached levels of consciousness and a deeper understanding for the world that just completely blows me away every single time I talk to him. And we do these like monthly prayers where everybody who's kind of like friends with Tom, we meditate, on the 13th of every month, and like we do these certain things. But Tom said something to me once that I think about to this day. He has this like moral code, and I've adopted one of those, which is, with every conversation, lift and be uplifted. Like try to bring something good to every interaction you have with people and with, nature and with the natural world. And he said something to me one day that was somewhat along the lines of like, you know, we're talking about a fly. This is Tom. This is how Tom is. Just very deep conversations about everything. And it was like a gnat, a small little fly, and I was swatting it away. He's like, "Why are you doing that?" And I was like, "Because he's annoying." Like this thing is. He's like, "But is he though? Is he gonna harm you if he lands near you?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You shouldn't do that." He's like, "Just he's just interacting with the world that is presented to him." He's like, "What would you
Yeah.
do if you were that gnat and you were interacting with the world?" And I sat there. I don't even know how long I sat there. I felt like it felt like an eternity, but I was like, "Damn, Tom." Like it just meant so much to me that he said that, and it really like again like cracked that rigid shell. And
Right.
now I have so much more respect for all forms of life, even something as
Yeah.
small as this little gnat. And he just said it in passing. Like it wasn't even like he just stopped to tell me to appreciate the little things, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for everybody, regardless of where you're at. But
Yeah.
um,
Interesting.
no, yeah, Tom's awesome. I don't know what he's doing right now, but he has the mind of like a 20-year old. Like he's so on top of things, but he's lived
And
a
then
long life.
you have to wonder like where does that fly in that moment was there for you to learn that lesson, which is even
Yeah.
more interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, kind of bringing it back full circle, I think that life lesson was important for me, especially at that time in my life. So I hope everybody can find a Tom, or at least, or at least interact with the world, and as sacred as it is. But yeah, no, I mean, if there's anything else that you want to talk about or that you want to talk to the audience about, feel free while we wrap things up a little bit. Of
Yeah. No, I think one, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate that. It's super grateful.
course.
And if anyone wants to look into my research, we have two different websites. One's called neuroenlightenment.com, and it's more geared for neurofeedback. And we also do remote training. So that's something also to think about. Neurofeedback has been very, very healing. So sometimes if people aren't ready for plant medicines, or if they've already done it, neurofeedback is its own healing modality that's very important. And we work with people around the world remotely. So that's something that we can do. Um, Also, we have a documentary that we're taking to film festivals right now, but it'll be released soon next year. And another project I'm working on is I want to run a retreat in Iceland next year. And that one's going to be
Oh,
the one
yeah.
with runes, and I'm going to have a
Yeah.
couple elders talk about the runes, the Icelandic traditions, and Norse traditions. So I'm really excited about that. So that will be coming up. And our retreat website's tiwazawakening.com. Tiwaz the rune, Tiwaz awakening. And trying to think of anything else. No, just really happy, really grateful that they had me on. And I would say that some of the things you mentioned earlier about nature, I think nature's around us at all times. That can be so healing. And trying to get on nature is something that we can all do better and more of. And sometimes I lose track of it because I'm working too much. And a lot of what I do is with technology on a computer. So nature is always healing. So always remember that. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to me as well. So